So the object here is to win.
No dough, no show.
Sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies.
Show me the money.
Welcome back to Beyond the Odds. I'm Shane, the Arbologist, joined as always by my boys Nick and Nick, the Arb Father and Arb Thief. In this week's show, we're going to talk about the bonuses and the art of low holds. We're going to go over a few scenarios with you guys. We're going to take a deep dive into positive expected value. We're going to have our first segment of the Book of the Week, and we're going to take a question from the mailbag. So, boys, episode 3, how we feeling?
Doing great, bro. Wicked excited to be here. I think this episode we're about to cover a lot of good information for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Episode 3, we have a lot of good content for today, and we're really excited to get into it.
Hell yeah, boys. Let's get right into segment 1, bonuses and the art of low holds.
I'm playing 65% of my games, I get a bonus. I gotta get the bonus.
Guys, we're going to start this segment off by talking about new account bonuses and how important they are to take advantage of, specifically for new players. And of course, if you open up a new P2, we all know that. So we're going to quickly talk about the domestic ones, what to look out for, and maybe some good strategies to take advantage of those.
Yeah, so bonuses at account opening are a huge part of building your bankroll early on. And pretty much every sportsbook has their own new user promotion because they're all competing for your business. They all want you to deposit at their sportsbook. However, there is an art to determining how you want to take advantage of those promos. So, for example, books like Fanatics, Bet Rivers, Bally's, those books that are going to limit you really fast, feel free to take whatever promotion you want. And the reason you can do that is because they're going to limit you within a week anyway. So if you're converting some promos and you're using bets with high odds, so for example, you're converting a bonus bet and the odds on the Bet Rivers side are plus 800. When you place a bonus bet on those high odd lines, you usually get limited faster. And that's not something a lot of people want to talk about. But if you're placing bonus bets on those high odd lines, you will get limited faster. So if you're converting bonus bets for, let's say, DraftKings or FanDuel, I might avoid those high odd lines when you're trying to convert a promotion. Maybe stick to something that's plus 200 or plus 250 and stick to main lines as well. So like a typical money line bet, that's not going to trigger any alerts on the FanDuel or DraftKings side. So I think it's important to be really careful with where you're placing your bonus bets or your profit boost or no sweat bets, just because if you place those bets on certain lines, you will get limited much faster.
Yeah, that's just really smart because we've talked about how important those specific accounts are, especially when you move to live arbitrage, right? So, if you have to, at that plus 200 to plus 300 range, something like that, you're probably still looking at, probably 50 to 60, percent ROI. So you're not really losing an insane amount of money, but you are taking a little bit less in the hopes of, keeping account longevity a little bit more in check.
Yeah, and if you're converting on those books where you have those high odd lines, those plus 800s to plus 900s, you'll typically convert at about 70, maybe 75% of a bonus bet, maybe like 30 to 40% for a profit boost, maybe 40 to 50% for a no sweat bet. That's what you can expect on those high odd bonus conversions. When you lower it to, like Shane said, a plus 200, a plus 250, you're probably going to lower your conversions at 10 to 15% in each scenario. However, it's much better for account health and it'll help your accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. We just wanted to touch on that because it was something that we had discussed this week when we talked about, taking advantage of these new account bonuses, and maybe not something that's mentioned to everyone as they go out there and try to maximize their ROI percentage on those bonuses. Just be careful, know the account and what it's worth. And like AT mentioned, those ones that are going to limit you within a week or two, anyways, just go for it. That's our suggestion. But let's get into the meat of what we wanted to talk about in this segment, and that's going to be the offshore bonuses, right? We get asked quite a bit about these big rollovers, right? These $2,000 bonuses at a 40x rollover that's going to, make you spend, $80 to $100,000 of volume before you can withdraw from your account. And so we're going to get into that a little bit and talk about if we did take advantage of one of those, how we would try to go through it without getting limited and ways to try to burn through that. So, guys, who wants to get us started?
I think I can start us off here. And, I bet a lot of our audience knows what a rollover is, but some of our audience might not know what a rollover is, right? So I'm just going to kind of break that down. And these are going to be found on a lot of offshore websites, right? Like a Bovada, MyBookie, Bookmaker, etc. What a rollover is, right? Let's say Bovada is going to give you 100% deposit match, right? And I can throw in $1,000. So I'm going to throw in $1,000 cash and they're going to give me 100% deposit match. Um, some sports books will have a cash deposit match, which Bovada does. So that'd be literally $1,000 free cash, which is huge. Most sports books are going to give you like a free play deposit match, and we can go into those too, like the differences after. But let's just say the Bovada deposit match. So we throw in 1,000, they match our 1,000. We now have 2,000. But let's say they have a rollover of 20 times, right? So we have $2,000 and we have to roll that over 20 times, which is 2,000 times 20 is $40,000. We either have to wager through a total of $40,000 and or lose the money that we deposit into the sports book in order to be able to cash out.
Yeah, I've actually had a few people contact me, and what we're trying to get at here is these books can limit you in the middle of that rollover. And then you're sort of in a purgatory of trying to get that money out and how best to go about that in little segments at this point. So it can be, it can really be a dead capital situation for a lot of people. And there's no best answer. You kind of got yourself into that mess, but how can you best get yourself out?
I think the best way to do that too is, if you know the book, like a lot of these offshores, they are going to limit you, especially like Bovada and MyBookie. They're a lot more recreational. But if you stick to more live odds and main lines, just like the domestic books, right, like a DraftKings and MGM, you're going to last a lot longer than if you're hammering player props. So that'll buy you more, longevity on the account to begin with. But a way to burn through this rollover, right, is obviously just doing arbs, doing middles, doing EV. But there's another thing called low holds, and this is actually a tool on OddsJam. It's a freaking great tool, probably the best tool on the market. Not even being biased, but a low hold, right, is basically taking a bet at break even. Like I don't want to say odds, but breaking even on a bet. And some people might be like, why would you want to take a bet just to break even, right? But basically it's just going to churn your rollover, and you're going to work through that rollover without the risk of losing any money. So here's like a little example. So let's say we can get the Celtics tonight and they're playing the Lakers, right? We can take the Celtics minus 5.5 at plus 110, and then we can go take the Lakers on another book, plus 5.5 at minus 110, right? We could throw $1,000 on the Celtics at plus 110 to win $1,100. We could then throw $1,100 to win $1,000 on the Lakers plus 5.5. No matter what happens in the scenario, we're going to break dead even. But what did we just do? We literally just rolled through $1,000 of the 20 grand that we have to work through, or the 40 grand, I'm sorry, that we have to work through.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, and there's a few other good uses for low holds too. I mean, you're definitely going to burn through those rollovers a lot quicker doing something like that. Especially betting on a main line spread, a money line, something like that. That's pretty safe too. You don't necessarily want to go and play a bunch of low holds that are very niche markets and large amounts of money. At least not in volume. So another a good thing about low holds is it can be used to transfer money from accounts. Guys that don't want to withdraw will sometimes take advantage of the low hold tool to try to move money from one book to another. You got to be careful. Sometimes it doesn't always work out because the big underdog can't actually, get the W, and you kind of reversed yourself and put more money in the account that you necessarily were trying to get money out of. But there's a couple uses for low holds, and I thought we'd discuss them.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm only taking a low hold if it's a 0% hold. I see a lot of them pop up. They're like 1%, 2%. You can do that, but you're going to lose money in the long run. So personally, I'm only taking a low hold if it's a 0% hold.
Absolutely, zero sum. Yep. Or even like, you can even check you can turn your ARB tool down to 0%, and you can see some, under 1%. They're barely ARBs. Those are really close to low holds too. So there's a way to see more opportunity if you do that.
I agree. And I also just want to add too, like, I don't I don't want the audience to think that like we're scaring them away from these bonuses. There's a ton of money in these bonuses. Like I literally have made close to $50,000 in the last 2 years just off of bonuses from mainly offshores and a site called Fliff. So definitely don't shy away from these. Just you have to know kind of the ins and outs of the rollover, and especially if you're a little bit more experienced, like which sports books are going to limit you quicker so you don't take as big of a rollover, which ones are going to let you rip for a long time so you can take these very high rollovers, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's all great information. And we really kind of blitzkrieg through that. So, just to be sure we didn't miss anything for you guys, contact the show if we miss something or you have something personal you'd like to discuss with us. You can hit us up on X at BTO_podcast. All right. So next we're going to talk about some scenarios.
Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? It's some real pretty shit now, man.
All right, this first scenario I'm going to give right to AF. So we just talked about offshores, bonuses, possibly getting limited during a big rollover. Well, guess what, buddy? You just got nailed with a, $2,000 bonus bet and you're halfway through it maybe. You got limited 20x. What are you going to do?
That's tough, but it's possible, right? And I've run into these scenarios before. Me and AT literally talked earlier today, I think it was, and he ran into a scenario like this, and there's definitely ways out of it, but it can be a pain in the ass. But let's discuss what our options are, right? Let's figure it out. And you have a few options, right? We just talked about low holds, right? We're going to use that low hold tool every single day. We're going to log on to OddsJam. We're going to go to that low hold tool, and we're going to type in, let's say it's MyBookie, right? MyBookie, and it's going to tell us, all these low hold options that we can make bets at, zero risk to lose any money, maybe even take a couple buck loss here and there. We're not going to try to do that too often, but just to work through and try to get out of it. Another option would be, I think you mentioned it, Shane, and that's your arbitrage tool, obviously, right? And you can put that down to a wicked low threshold of 0%. Might get some of these arbs, they're 0.1%, 0.2%, 0.3%, but making a couple bucks in the meanwhile, and you're churning through that rollover. And another tactic that you could use is using that EV tool. Same thing. You can drop your threshold. You can go down to 1 to 2% EV, and you might be limited down to $100 on MyBookie once you get limited, $50, something like that. And you might have to churn through a lot of volume of bets in order to kill that rollover, but volume is your friend in EV, right? So even if you're doing 20, 30 bets a day at lower money, there's a higher probability that you're probably going to come out even more ahead on that offshore book that you had.
Yeah, I actually found myself in a very similar situation a couple of weeks ago, and I get this question all the time in my DMs, is I have a $20,000 rollover left to convert. I used as many low holds as I could, and I have no funds left on my domestic books. What do I do? And AF said it exactly right. At this point, you can do some EV betting to kind of roll through this as quickly as you can. And if you're worried about possibly losing money due to some bad variance, keep your bet amounts kind of low. Do $25 bets. If you do $25 bets with 1,000 bets, chances are you're not going to lose that much money. You could even win some money, where if you're doing EV bets with $100 bets, there's a chance you could lose some money there because you're doing less bets. So I would stick to lower bets, get in as many as possible so the variance kind of levels out, and eventually you'll get through that high rollover.
Volume's king, bro. Volume is definitely king.
That's really great info, guys. I know for a fact that's going to be super useful to more people than we know. So I'm glad we got that out there. All right, the next scenario is going to AT, and it's something he's a pro at. I think we're all pros at this with how much we arb. So, you got one-sided on an arb. The market changed on you. The odds changed on you. What are you going to do?
Yeah, so this is something that happens to the best arbitrage bettors in the world, and you still have to figure out what you're going to do if you got one-sided. And like Shane said, you place one side of an arbitrage bet on one sports book, you go to place the second side and the line closed or the line changed, and you'll have to figure out, what am I going to do? So before we get into what you can do, I think the most important thing is not to panic, right? Because these odds can come back, and there are things you can do to either cash out your money or minimize your losses, right? We're arbitrage bettors. We're not in the business of possibly taking huge losses. In this case, we want to mitigate our loss if we're going to take a loss in the situation. So the first thing that you can do is check to see if you can cash out your bet. Most of the larger domestic books like FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, Caesars, they will allow you to cash out your bet. Even if you're going to take a small loss, I think that's okay, right? We want to minimize our losses here. Next, if you're unable to cash out your bet, you can check other sports books, see what else is out there, especially if you're working with, 10 sports books at this point. You can check every other sports book, see if that line is posted anywhere else. Might still be an arbitrage bet on another sports book, or you can find a bet that maybe will allow you to lose $0 or lose a small amount of money. So I would check other sports books next, see what else is out there. And then the final thing you can do is you can still place the other side of that bet and just make the payouts match on both sportsbooks. So for example, let's say you had an arbitrage bet where it was plus 120 on one sportsbook and plus 100 on the second sportsbook. You lock in the plus 120 side, you get your money down, then you go to the plus 100 sportsbook and the odds dropped to minus 150. This is no longer an arbitrage bet because that minus 150 number is a larger number than the plus 120 number. So what you can do is still bet on the minus 150 side, make your payout match exactly to what it is on the plus 120 side. And in this situation, maybe you'll lose 10 or 15 bucks, but it's much better than letting that plus 120 side ride and possibly losing 300 bucks or 400 bucks. So again, we're in the business of minimizing our losses if we're going to take a loss. So just because you got one-sided on an arbitrage bet doesn't mean you have to lose hundreds of dollars by possibly letting it ride. So there are things you can kind of do to kind of save yourself in that situation.
Yeah, for somebody new coming into arbitrage, they might feel the need to ride that out and not really know that fact. But I did it straight from the beginning. And it's a little bit of a gut punch when you're taking a few losses even early, even though it's small. You're just not used to it when you're doing some arbitrage, but you definitely want to not get one-sided, right? You're looking to mitigate loss as much as humanly possible. And when I was doing a lot of consulting, that was one of the first things I would tell people is you're gonna experience, some hardships. Markets are gonna change on you, and it's the exact information that you gave.
Yeah, and I'll be perfectly honest, I get one-sided probably almost every day. So I follow those strategies to kind of help myself along the way, and knowing that, okay, it's okay if I get one-sided. There are things I can do to kind of fix the situation.
100% every day, multiple times a day with the volume, that I'm putting in anyways. Yeah.
All right, hold on. I'm throwing a curveball. We didn't talk about this before. I'm throwing a curveball. All right, you gentlemen, you could take a $20 loss, or you could do a reverse middle and make $40. Are you risking that reverse middle, or are you just going to cut your losses here? What do you guys think?
What's the lie? Is it just 1 point?
Yeah. Let's say it's a player prop, right? And it's player's points. So we got an over 19.5 and under 18.5. So if that player hits exactly 19 points, right, we're going to lose $700. Or we could hit that, it doesn't reverse middle on us, and we make like, 30, 40 bucks. What are you guys going to do there?
Unless it's on accident because I was spamming the bet button, I'm going to mitigate my loss. I'm not going to attack the reverse middle.
All right. I'm going to say something a little crazy. I don't usually do this, but I think the answer is it depends. So you gave a great example. If I'm going to throw some other scenarios out there. So let's say it is a total for an entire college basketball game, and the game hasn't started yet. The odds of getting reverse middled on a total for a college basketball game where the range of outcomes are so large, they can score anywhere from 110 points to 190 points. Chances of you getting reverse middled on a 1 point reverse middle for a full college basketball game, probably kind of slim. And again, I know we want to mitigate our losses, but in this situation, I might let it ride. However, if it's a basketball steals line and it's over 2.5 steals and under 1.5 steals, well, the range of outcomes are probably 0, 1, 2, or 3. There's a pretty good probability that you can get reverse middled in that situation. Another thing to think about is if it's a live reverse middle, when did it happen? Did you get reverse middles in the first 5 minutes of the game? Because if that happened, again, your range of outcomes are probably pretty wide. Or did you get reverse middled in the fourth quarter? Well, range of outcomes there, game's almost over. Good chance you're going to get reverse middled. So I think there are some things you want to think about before you make that decision, but there are a lot of factors that you need to take into account. Probably not a popular opinion. I don't usually teach people to do this, but I think the answer is it depends.
No, it makes sense in that factor. And the example that he gave was that points spread on a player prop. So that was part of the reason I was like, hell no. But yeah, it makes more sense to do it, if it's plus minus 225 and a half and 226 and a half. And yeah, it's unlikely that you're going to land on that number. Famous last words though, right? You just lost 700 because this was never going to happen and it did. But we all know that in gambling.
No, that's friggin' great advice. And, honestly, I'm going to start using that because I get this question a lot in my DMs and people are like, yo, should I just reverse middle this and I might make some money, or should I, just cash out and I don't really want to take a $30 loss, and they're all like frantic and hectic and don't know what to do. And to be honest, my advice might not be the best. A lot of times I agree. Like I usually just say, cash out, it's not worth risking it. But, how you kind of broke it down is a friggin', great example. Like you said, steals, blocks, assists, rebounds, even points, even if they're a little bit higher, that's, still kind of sketchy. But a full game total or spread, like, I don't know. I don't know what the odds of that is, right? But it might not be a bad idea to gamble a little bit there.
The only time I got reverse middled in the months I've been doing this was a full game point spread. Unbelievable.
It happens. It's happened to me multiple times too. But I've also I've done the reverse middle thing on purpose a few times, and I've made some money that way too. So.
Well, some good advice, some really great scenarios that I'm sure all of you have at some point in your edge betting journey been through. So, well, we'll get into the next segment, and it's a segment that a lot of people have been asking us for, right? We talked a lot in episode 1 and episode 2 about positive expected value. And so people were really wanting to dig into the strategies that we use, and specifically the filter settings. So let's get right into it. Positive expected value.
I'd buy that for $1.
We're going to start this scenario just off some question-based ways to interact with each other here. So I'll start us off with a good question here. What are the factors that tell us a bet is positive EV, and how do we decide whether or not to place that bet?
This is a great question, and definitely a question that we all get, very often. And, we briefly talked on positive expected value the other day on the last episode. But basically, this is just looking for boosted payouts or discounted prices to the market or, sharp books. So basically, let's say we could get a bet at minus 120. So someone's going to risk $120 to win $100 on that minus 120 line. If sharp books like Pinnacle and Bookmaker and even Bet Online and stuff like that are going to have this at minus 170, right? We can get this $50 cheaper on a recreational site most likely, and that's going to lead to long-term profits. We can flip it too, right? Like say these sharp books that don't limit anybody, they welcome professional bettors action. They're going to give us a line of plus 120 on an underdog, right? That's $100 to win 120, and then we can go get that same exact bet on another site, most likely again like a recreational site, like a DraftKings, an MGM, even kind of like a FanDuel at sometimes, at plus 170. Right, that's $100 to win 170. That's an extra $50 for taking that same exact bet on a different site, and that's going to add up to crazy profits long run.
Yeah, I mean, that's defining it exactly. I think some of the things are how we're going to decide to place it, which is, I'll go right into the next question and sort of list these books and talk about how we use those DVIG books to sort of decide whether or not the market is aligning with what we're defining as value, right? So what books are we looking to DVIG with? And you mentioned them in your answer, Pinnacle, Bookmaker, Bet Online. Circa can be great for main lines. They have sort of a lack of lines in general, not as many odds being put out there, but when they are out there, they're typically going to be pretty sharp. And then of course, FanDuel in certain situations, specifically for props, NBA props. But those are the books that you can use in the odds jam filter as well. So that's kind of not why I mentioned those, because those are the right choices. But something that we're looking for in how we decide to make a positive expected value bet, right? It's, let's say we open up the live lines and we see at least four of these books listed in the odds. If three of those four are aligned or similar, then we say the market is aligned, and we know that what we're considering positive expected value really is that it really is the outlier in the market.
That's the key word, right? Like outlier, and then you hit it on the head as well, and you said market being aligned, right? When I first started EV betting around October of 2023, I still had great success using OddsJam and just kind of blindly taking whatever popped up on the screen, right? Like I was still doing really well. But I just had a lot more swings, right? And then it was roughly in the summertime when, volume's a little bit less, and I was doing a little bit less arbitrage on MLB and WNBA, and I started really focusing on EV. And I'm like, how can I get this 2% ROI up to 4 or 5%? Like, what's the key here to get that, extra long-term value, right? And I started really diving into clicking on every bet that pops up on the EV feed, right? Like theoretically, every bet that pops up on the EV feed will probably make you a profitable better long run. But you can definitely hone in on some of these settings and definitely get your ROI up a lot, right? And that's going to be looking at these books, right? It's clicking on whether it's pregame or live, right? If you're going to do live, you're probably best to use stoppage, so you have a little bit of time to click into these bets. But that's going to be clicking into these bets and really looking like, all right, I can get minus 120 here on DraftKings. Pinnacle's at minus 170. Where's Bookmaker? Where's Bet Online? Where's Circa, FanDuel, stuff like that, right? Are they at minus 150, 60, 70 aligned with Pinnacle? Or are they more closer to that minus 120 line, that I can get on DraftKings? What we don't want to see, right, is these sharper books kind of closer to the line that we can get, right? That kind of says, hey, maybe Pinnacle is slow to react here, or their numbers not as sharp here, right? But we can definitely get that extra confidence and agreement in the market, if they're all at minus 150 to minus 170, maybe even higher than Pinnacle at minus 180, that gives us that reassurance, like, this bet that we're getting, this discount that we're getting is actually like a really true value bet, or the true market outlier.
Yeah, the more books, the more of those sharp books we named are aligned, the better, more confident you can be that you're getting true positive expected value. So you should definitely use that method and attack those. Yeah, next, we're going to go into what is our DVIG method of choice. We're not going to go over all these methods. We're really just going to talk about the one that we use pretty much full time, and that's worst case. What is worst case? It's the most conservative option, right? It typically provides the safest positive expected value bets out there. In theory, it should be reducing your variance.
No, I totally agree. Like there's multiple DVIG methods, and I don't really have the knowledge to break into all the different types, but essentially, pretty much worst case is just going to be like you said, the most conservative. Whatever pops up on the page is actually really true EV value, right? Like it's not going to be overweighing any type of plus odds bets or minus odds bets. It's not going to play any favorites there, right? Like this is going to be the true conservative approach to EV betting.
We're giving you this info sort of so you can track it and go right and plug this stuff into the filter, right, guys? So, be taking notes or replay this back when you're looking at your OddsJam filter, and you can really just plug and play this information. So next, we're going to talk about the markets. Obviously there's main lines, alt lines, and player props. So are there any markets that you target and specifically make separate filters for, or do you remove any on purpose altogether?
Honestly, I'll take value wherever there's value, right? Like I'll even bet some of these harder sports like tennis and soccer. To be honest, I usually just kind of make a separate filter for these sports, especially tennis, right? Like tennis has so much volume live, right? Like there's so much volume, it moves so fast. I don't want to have this mixed in with my NBA and my NCAA basketball volume and stuff like that. It's just going to clutter my feed. It's really just going to make it a lot harder for me to get these bets locked in. So I mean, I'll take literally anything. I'll bet on. I don't think OddsJam covers it, but I'd bet on Russian ping pong if they had it, right? If there was value. But I'd usually just separate tennis and soccer and stuff like that away from NFL, NBA, any type of college sports and stuff like that.
I'm glad you said that. That's not something we specifically covered before, but it's the exact piece of advice I gave in my recent YouTube video. So, you have my back on that. Feels pretty good. But it's exact reasons too, right? You're going to lose efficiency if your data feed is cluttered with crap that you can't really do anything with, right? You should be focusing on the stuff that you need to be focused on. What are you going to be able to get in play? And if you have 100 tennis plays popping up and down on your data feed, it's going to fuck you up pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the next category, market width. First, I'll define what market width is for those who don't really know. And it's really just the difference between the two opposite lines set by your DVIG book. So, for example, minus 110 plus 110 is a market width of 20. You have 20 points of difference in between those two odds from the same book, setting the same line, just the opposite sides. So the smaller the market width, the more confident the book is in its lines. That's why when you're setting your market width, you're deciding, okay, what is my threshold for how confident I want this book to be? Is it going to be a 25? Is it going to be 50? All this leads into how you're trying to affect your variance and the amount of opportunities you're going to see in your data feed.
I think this is great, especially for newer EV bettors, right? Like you're going to see less volume if you set a market width, whether it's 25, 50, whatever it is, you're going to see a lot less volume, but the volume that you see is going to be sharper, I guess I could say, right? That's probably a good word to define this. It's going to be sharper volume that you're going to see. Theoretically, you should see less variance with a tighter width. I had width usually set around 40 when I first started for the first couple months, and then I just kind of noticed like, hey, I'm not really seeing a ton of volume here. I'm going to open it up a little bit. Went to like 60, and then I just kept gradually going. And to be honest, now I don't use any width, but that's just from experience, right? Like I said in the a couple minutes ago, I click into every bet and I look where other books are. I'm reading that market, and that comes with experience and time of doing this, and noticing, hey, where's this book, where's that book? Okay, this is a good bet, and I can just glance at the market 5-10 seconds, whatever it is. But definitely, I do recommend using at least like a 50 width. I think that's pretty reasonable, for a mix of volume and efficiency.
Absolutely. And you can go by choice too, right? If you're starting positive EV with a smaller bankroll and you want to control variance as much as possible, maybe at 25, you can test the waters and see what kind of, if you're still getting 30, 40 bets a day with a 25 market width, and you're doing those things we talked about earlier, which is assuring the market is aligned and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's midday and you haven't met the volume that you need. So now you can change your market width to 50 and see if you can get more opportunity. That is actually a really great segment going right into min-max odds, right? So the min-max odds that we've always kind of set is plus 200, minus 200. Sort of the standard for what we're looking for. Nothing too crazy on either end, not some super huge underdog, not some super high favorite either. And we've mentioned it a couple episodes ago as well. Lowering that to 150, maybe minus 150, you're going to see, again, less opportunity, but in theory, you're going to have less variance. So it really just goes into where is your threshold for risk tolerance.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit to this one as well. So if you don't minimize the range of odds that you're looking at, you're going to see plus money odds of like plus 500, plus 700, plus 1,000. Yes, those might be positive EV bets. However, if you're consistently betting those large money odds, you're probably going to lose in the long run, right? These are huge odds. They're not going to hit as frequently. So if you consistently bet those and you don't really have the bankroll to sustain that variance, it's not going to end well. So like Shane said, I think the plus 150, minus 150 is great. I sometimes use minus 200, plus 200, and it really reduces the negative variance that you can possibly see.
Yeah, this is a good subject to honestly talk about, especially with like MLB coming up, right? Like AT said, like a lot of these longer odd stuff, like I think you still will be profitable long run. You just have to know that like the swings you're going to experience are is going to be crazy, right? Like you're going to take MLBs coming up, right? And we got home run props, right? And these are at anywhere from plus 250 to plus 800, right? And these do have long term value, but like you could go 10, 15 bets without hitting a plus 600, plus 800 home run line, right? Like you're going to experience some major swings, and you have to be ready for that. I don't think any new person jumping into EV should even be close to that. They should 100% be, at these tighter odds, minus 150 to plus 150. You're still going to get some volume. It's not going to be crazy, crazy volume, but it's going to be a lot safer and less of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, guys, one of the heavy hitters in positive expected value in my mind, Bob Lagrasso, aka the hockey guy. I originally got into Odds Jam way back when and was asking about positive expected value. He's one of the Odds Jam coaches I got to talk to. And I remember him saying, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 46% of win percentage is his threshold, right? So he's doing exactly that. He's controlling variance, making sure that he has a pretty good shot to cash, this ticket over the 30 or 40 bets he's placing in a day. Let's move right into percentage and simply put 4+% for pre-match and 6+% for live. You guys have anything different on that?
No, I mean, I agree. I like having a decent little gap between, what I'm taking and what the rest of the market is. And that's all it really is, right? Like we're getting bets at whatever it is, minus 110 and the market's at minus 140. And, that's 4%, right? If we're going to take a 1% bet, it's, we're getting minus 110 and they're at minus 120, right? Just having a bigger gap between what OddsJam say is recommending and what these sharper books are at is this going to lead to less of a roller coaster long run. That's all it really breaks down to.
Yeah, and I'll just add, if there's a huge slate of games that day, you can be a little bit greedy and raise those percentages. So, for example, on a college basketball Saturday where you have 50 to 100 games going on, I was doing live EV betting, and I think I had it about 8%, and I was still seeing a crazy amount of action. So,
Moving right into sports and leagues, and I think we already know the answer to this question because AF told us he'd bet on Russian ping pong if it was there. But do you eliminate any sports or leagues out of your filter?
No, I mean, yeah, you hit it on the head. I bet on pretty much anything that has value. I just want to make sure I'm being as efficient as possible, right? So I usually take that tennis out, that soccer out of my main filters with, it's NBA season, it's college basketball season right now. So I make separate filters for those sports. And, whenever, maybe early morning or mid afternoon when NBA is not on yet, I'll go hit those filters and see if there's any tennis matches and I'll attack that separately.
Well, guys, that does it for positive expected value. So that was a lot of information, a lot of plug and play they can do with their filters to try to find some success. What we would say, guys, as always, contact the show, BTO_podcast on X. If we missed anything or if you have anything specific about success you found with filters that you've set, something you do a little bit differently, please share it with us. And we'll move right into the next segment. And this is our first time doing this on the show. It's Book of the Week.
I am in a rush. Got to make the bookies.
This week's Book of the Week is Onyx Odds, a sweepstake platform that clones DraftKings. Super useful for those guys in limited markets. Don't have access to DraftKings? Pretty much you do now.
yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite new sports books. A couple of things that make Onyx Odds great is one, they don't seem to limit. So they do have a $500 max win, which means if you bet $280 to win $220, that's the highest that you can be paid out on Onyx, which is fine. That's much higher limits than a lot of other books have. So just the fact that they don't limit and we are arbitrage betting or EV betting, a lot of value with Onyx. A lot of other things I like as well, but I'll give it to AF as well and see, what do you like about Onyx?
No, I mean you mentioned both things, right? Like they're a clone of DraftKings, and DraftKings has a shit ton of value, and 500 max total payout is pretty good. Definitely considering whose lines they copy, right? Like DraftKings is not going to give us a max total payout of $500, especially on props. So Onyx Odds for pregame is fucking amazing.
Where have you guys found success using Onyx against another specific book or type of books?
Yeah, so I think Onyx arbs really well with FanDuel, just because if you think about it, FanDuel arbs really well with DraftKings, so it's also going to arb well with Onyx. I've also seen a lot of value with Onyx versus the exchange books like Novig and ProfitX. and even some of your offshore prop builders. So really, if you think about it, DraftKings is usually way off with their lines for, especially for pregame. That means Onyx is going to be way off as well. So you can pretty much arb Onyx to almost any book, but I see a ton of arbs pop up with the exchange books and FanDuel.
Yeah, pregame they're definitely goaded. Live, I struggle a little bit live, and I definitely get a lot of messages about this, like, hey, using Onyx live, I can't get these. I think they have a shit ton of potential. The pregame product is amazing. Live is a little jumpy, right? Like I think we talked about this maybe even last episode. I kind of forget, but these bets take a little bit to go through, right? Like they might take 5-10 seconds to go through. So you definitely want to make sure if you're arbing with Onyx, you always hit that Onyx side first, and make sure that side actually goes through before you go hit the other side.
Yeah, we can summarize that again, right? Some of the cons are definitely going to be that they're not really structured good for live. They're really kind of glitchy live. And the fact that this is one of those books that you're going to want to see the ticket first. Like if you're trying to lock in an Onyx odds bet, you want to see that ticket before you lock in the other side.
Yeah, and another positive thing with Onyx is they have very fast payouts. So they typically pay out within an hour or two if you're withdrawing to debit card. That is a lot faster than some of the other sweepstake books. So if you need to move money around, Onyx is great for doing that.
That's good to know. I actually haven't withdrawn yet from Onyx odds, but I know you can, it's 48, 72 hours from some of these other sweepstakes platforms. So, if you're a new arbitrage bettor, that's super, super beneficial because especially if you have a lower bankroll, AT said it many times, you need access to your funds.
That's exactly right. If you're a new arbitrage bettor and you're using DraftKings and they limited you, that's okay. Jump to Onyx. They have the same odds.
Or even if, right, like if you don't have access to DraftKings, I think you already said this, but like all these guys in California, Texas, Florida, right, like they're asking us all the time, which books am I going to jump on, right? Like which books do I have access to? And essentially they have DraftKings, so that's all.
All right, guys, wrapping it up. Let's get right into that last segment, the mailbag.
I got mail! Yay! I got mail! Yay!
This week's question comes from Crime Central, and he asks, I'm interested to know your strategies to profit for MLB. Can you consistently arb baseball, and do you change your positive expected value strategy at all?
Yeah, so I can speak about this from an arbitrage perspective. And the truth is, the volume is going to be lower than NBA and NFL and those sports that have a crazy amount of arbitrage volume. However, there is still money to be made with MLB. So for pregame arbitrage, you will see a lot of strikeout props. You'll see home run props, maybe some RBI props or run lines. So you will see some pregame arbitrage activity. Outside of that, there's live arbitrage for MLB as well. And for those, you don't really see any player props, but you will see team total lines. You'll see run lines. You'll see overall totals for the game. So those will pop up when you're live arbing. A lot of them are really nice percentages as well. So there's money to be made with baseball. Obviously, the volume is going to be lower. However, you will see some arbitrage pop up for both pregame and live.
Yeah, and another market I always seen it was on Fliff and a lot of offshores, and it was like inning lines or something like that, like inning totals, like seventh inning over 1.5 runs or something like that. And I used to grab a ton of these for arbitrage.
Yeah, so I haven't actually bet baseball yet. This is going to be my first, summer getting into it. But are you guys worried about limits because it's only baseball, right? A lot of niche markets in baseball. It's the only thing out there. So how focused are the books on sort of your action during that time frame? And is it really worth it to push anything during baseball?
I think like AT said, like, if you can get any mainline action and stuff like that, like, run lines or money lines or anything like that, that's totally fine, obviously. Right. Like I know I just kind of said a little sketchy example, right? I said like seventh inning money line over and unders, right? You don't want to take this on any healthy account, right? You don't want to take this on a brand new MGM, DraftKings, or anything like that. Maybe a Fliff or some of these offshore books that don't tend to limit too quick, but you're totally right, Shane. Like you don't want to risk your account health on any niche markets. MLB can definitely be a little bit of a dry season, but like AT said, that there's definitely money to be made.
Onyx Odds, baby. That's where we come into Onyx Odds.
That's it, bro. Right. That's gonna be a great tool this year for us.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't have during last year's MLB season was these newer books like Novig, Profit X, Onyx. We don't know how the baseball landscape is going to look for this year. It might be even better than it was last year, so I think we might see even more money being made during this season.
Yep.
And AF, talk to us just a little bit about your positive expected value strategy during MLB. Does it change at all?
It does change a little bit, to be honest. This is when I really started to dive heavy into EV, right? Like it was, the dog days of summer, right? Like we're middle of July and it's just MLB and a little bit of WNBA. And, I was still getting, decent arbitrage value, but I'm like, what can I really do to make more money, right? And I was already EV betting and stuff like that, but I was like, let me focus more time on this. And I really just started to dive into my filters, and I'm like, what books are showing constant value? And a lot of people are might disagree with me on this, and that's FanDuel, right? Like I'm gonna drop a big tip for all you listeners, and that's FanDuel has a shit ton of value on MLB props. They're known to be sharper on NFL, they're known to be sharper on NBA, but to be honest, last year they were the top performer for me personally on MLB pregame props, whether that was alt strikeouts, that was home run props, that was hits, RBIs, like you name it, all of the above. FanDuel had a shit ton of value. And it was usually on the overs, right? Like you're getting plus 220 and everybody else is at plus 150. And a lot of people just think like, I don't know, FanDuel was sharp in NBA. I don't know if I should bet into this market. And I'm telling you, I had over, 1,500 bet sample size, and I had like a double-digit ROI on FanDuel pregame player props in MLB. So if I have any tip, would definitely be pay attention to FanDuel pregame EV bets this year. Just because they worked last year doesn't mean they're going to work this year, but definitely check them out. The only thing that I really changed last year during MLB season with EV was opening up my odds range, right? Like we talked about plus 200 to minus 200. I opened it up and it was to like 350, 400. And the only reason is because of these home run props and these alternate strikeout props and stuff like that. Again, there's going to be more variance in these, but there was a lot of value in these alternate lines.
Huge tidbits of information there. Something I'm definitely going to take on board when the dog days of summer, like you mentioned, come around. That is it for episode 3. We sure do appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with us for a little bit. Wanted to let you guys know how important your participation is in the show. Your questions, your ideas for topics for the show to keep this stuff fresh is vital to our success. And we appreciate every single one of you guys. Boys, what do you got?
It's been fun. I really enjoyed episode 3. I'm really looking forward to episode 4. But like Shane said, keep the questions coming. We want to help you guys however we can.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we covered, a lot of good information in this episode, and definitely, please, guys, hit us with those questions or any type of feedback in our comments or our email. This information is valuable for us to keep spitting out these episodes for you.
All right, guys, that's it for the show. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Odds. Don't forget, you can get a 35% discount code for your first month on OddsJam using the code Beyond the Odds. As always, you can contact the show by DMing us on X at BTO_podcast or sending an email to beyondtheoddscast@gmail.com.